What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with Tesla stock. I'm going to talk about some very important things that came out from Tesla's earnings and what this means for the market moving forward. But before I begin down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on with the markets and Tesla. Tesla was down quite a bit. We saw a very, very significant drop that happened after it announced its earnings. It dropped over 6%, and now it's down about, I think, just under 6%. But the thing is, Tesla got a big hit. It dropped quite a bit, and it's barely holding this support right here. So the question is, how is Tesla going to move going forward? What happened during its earnings to cause this drop, and what does this mean for the market, in my opinion? I'm going to talk about all of this over the next couple of minutes. When it comes to earnings, right, today we had Tesla and IBM. For tomorrow, we have Intel and Visa. Basically, for the rest of the week, the earnings are going to be very minor, so nothing too crazy is going to be coming out. And then for data, for tomorrow, an hour before the market opens, we have initial jobless claims and some jobs numbers. And on top of that, we have the GDP numbers coming out. We have some very important GDP numbers, GDP sales, GDP prices, all that's coming out. The GDP numbers is going to be very important for the gauge of the economy to understand how things are looking, and it's going to be very important for the strength in which that's developing right now. But besides that, that's going to affect the markets at least an hour before market open at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Besides that, we just have some bill auctions at 11:30 a.m., and that's pretty much it. Nothing else is too crazy for now. But watch and see what the GDP numbers look like tomorrow and see how this affects the markets. As far as Tesla goes, we have some bad news that came out. Technically, Tesla has missed on EPS and revenue. EPS was 71 cents. The expectation was 74 cents. So we actually did worse than expected on EPS. For revenue, we got about 25.17 billion. Instead, the expected revenue was $25.6 billion. So we were below expectations for EPS and revenue, which is pretty negative for Tesla. As soon as these numbers came out, Tesla started tanking in terms of its share price. But we had some good things that came out. Not everything was negative, of course. The cash flow increased to about $29.1 billion. Energy storage deployment was up 125%. The Model Y was the best-selling vehicle of any kind in 2023. And the energy generation and storage business profits nearly quadrupled in 2023. Now, despite that, although there were some good things that came out, there was a lot of ambiguity within this earnings report, meaning there were a lot of things that Elon Musk and Tesla were not certain about. They weren't giving us lots of very, very straightforward answers, and that led to more and more, I would say, confusion, less certainty about the future for their production and factors like that. In summary, they mentioned that in 2023, they delivered over 1.2 million Model Ys, making it the best-selling vehicle of any kind. For a long time, many doubted the viability of EVs. Today, they're the best-selling vehicle on the planet. Great news for Tesla. Profitability, you can see that they had about 2.1 billion in operating income for Q4. And besides that, for the entire year, it's a little bit different. For cash, the operating cash flow of $13.3 billion and free cash flow of $4.4 billion in 2023. So some things were quite decent here and there. There was something that was decent. The cost of goods sold per vehicle declined sequentially in Q4. Their team remains focused on growing the output while trying to keep costs down. Operations, once again, the Model Y was one of the best-selling cars in the world, the best-selling model on the planet. The total automotive revenues, you can see the numbers right here for Q4. This was a slight improvement from Q3 because they got more sales. Services and other areas also got basically the same amount of revenue. For other things out there, you can see the numbers are very similar. The gross margins, the total gross margins actually went down a little bit relative to before, but the operating margins were a little bit better than what we got in the previous quarter, so somewhat of an improvement. Operating expenses were basically the same as last quarter. That's despite more sales. And besides that, everything else is close to what we saw from before, with free cash flow actually going up just a little bit. So there's a slight improvement there. For the total automotive revenues for 2023, you can see there was actually a slight improvement, of course. services as well. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I apologize for that. Total revenues was also a slight increase. Operating expenses, still a slight increase. Things like that are just expected. Their margins for 2023 were a lot worse than that of 2022, though. So that's worth noting. No surprises there. Now, total revenue grew by 3% year over year in Q4, 25.2 billion year over year. It was impacted by the different things such as deliveries and factors like that. Profitability was reduced because of price cuts and such. You can see the total production was right over here for the numbers alongside total deliveries. Not bad numbers whatsoever for the entire year, especially with the Model Y sales. Total production for 2023 showed about 1.8 million. So that's a very, very big increase compared to 2022, with total deliveries being relatively hot as well. So not bad for Tesla, very, very strong numbers, big growth year over year. And although that's very awesome, there was something negative that Tesla announced about this. So I went over some good news. Let's go over some negative news now. Despite the fact that we had a relatively strong 2023 technically, Tesla's warning us that the production growth rate will be notably lower than 2023 for this year. Now, why is that? That's because Tesla's entering another growth phase, and it tends to resemble an S-shaped growth phase, right? So that means they tend to slow down to increase again. And this is happening as a result of a new announcement. And that is in 2025 for the second half, Tesla will likely be announcing a new model that's going to be coming out. And for preparation, it could take them a very long time just to prepare for that. So with the preparation that's coming, the growth rate in production will be a little bit lower for this year relative to 2023. That's something very important. This is what caused Tesla to drop because they didn't give us any specific numbers about the Optimus production about different products out there, and also their sales. There was nothing that was really given about that. They just said that it's very unknown. So that's something that's worth noting. Besides that, you can see there's still a lot of growth within their different sectors, especially energy storage. Very, very big increase, 125% increase. But we had some negative things to be discussing. So what are some negative things that were announced? First and foremost, besides the things that I mentioned, well, something that's good is the fact that they're improving their AI technology, replacing over 300,000 lines of codes with the neural network. But unfortunately, Tesla is still looking for a new product announcement date in the future, and they're still looking at different places to build more gigafactories outside of North America. They mentioned that 2023 was very challenging because of the high interest rate environment, and they mentioned that Tesla's margins and such are going to be heavily dependent on those. So Tesla is very dependent on interest rates. If they maintain a longer interest rate environment for longer than expected, a higher for longer environment than expected, this would be negative for Tesla. And there is some potential for that, especially looking at the latest inflationary numbers. But when Tesla was asked about their margins, they said that they're not sure. When asked about production, they said that they're not sure. It depends on different factors. And they mentioned things like that. Musk also trivialized the Dojo supercomputers, calling it a risk. And he mentioned that it's going to be a risk worth taking, and it's going to depend on different factors. They also mentioned it's going to take a long time for them to figure out the growth projection for the 4680 cell production. They're still working on that. They mentioned that there are other things they're still working on. They're not as certain about a lot of things. They're trying to reduce costs. And for Optimus, there's a lot of potential, which is going to help it essentially exceed the value of the company in itself. So Musk mentioned that although there are no production estimates for 2024, although there's a risk of production dropping very soon, and these margins are not the best, and the fact that Tesla missed, Tesla still has potential to become the most valuable company on the planet. So long term is still very bright with these technologies, these developments and such. Tesla also mentioned that a new model is going to be coming out soon, next year especially, and that when it comes to their approach, they have a dual approach right now with Nvda and the Dojo supercomputer. So those are some big improvements. But unfortunately, like I said earlier, their margins are not the best. There's a risk of their growth rates to be decreasing. And on top of this, there are other negative things such as the lack of an ability to beat what many expectations were. So, if anything, a lot of the things Tesla went over were just the same things we've known from the past. There was no big surprise when it came to energy storage and such. But what was bad was the fact that they missed on earnings, and their guidance is not that strong technically, considering that there may be production cuts, if anything. So, with that being said, there was more negative than bad for the immediate term, but more good than bad for the long term, in my view, from this earnings report. So, for the short term, this is more bearish for Tesla. For the long term, this is a lot more bullish. Where do I see Tesla going? We're basically barely holding support at 195. We're barely holding onto this by a thread. If we lose this, 190 to 188 is going to be our next range to be watching for. And if we basically lose 180, our next target is 175. So Tesla looks a bit more bearish, got a big hit. And unfortunately, it's still looking very weak. For resistance, you're going to be watching 200, 202.5, and 205 as resistance. If anything, I think that Tesla might try to rebound a bit and then continue sinking. The share price is looking very weak, so there's going to be a risk of more downside, potentially all the way down to the 190 area, if not below that. Unfortunately, guys, it is what it is, but Tesla is still looking very weak. What about for SPY? SPY is a little bit red, kind of flat right now. SPY is going to be a little different from Tesla because we have the GDP numbers coming out in the morning. We'll see if this leads to a little pop towards this imbalance. They might try to grab liquidity up here, then sink this back down. So for a little pop and drop like move. Watch 186 as resistance, 486, and 487 above that. For support, watch 485 flat. If we lose that, we could be heading down towards 483.25. In my opinion, the most likely possibilities we kind of pop and we open, push up a bit, grab liquidity up here first before they sink this back down lower towards the 483s. So a little pop towards 486.5 to 487. Sideways price action, then rejection back down is the most likely possibility. Watch for that very carefully. On the QQQ, it's the same thing. This might push up towards this imbalance around 427. Shop up here, then reject and start sinking back down lower. Watch support at 425, 424, and then 422.5. I think a pop and then drop is very probable. I find that very likely for the QQQ. As far as Nvidia goes, Nvidia might pop a little bit, and we might actually retest about 620. Again, it's still holding up very nicely. It might shop around. Then it might start sinking back down a little bit lower. So I think it might come back down to towards 610, then 607. So I think a little pop is going to come first to the 620, some sideways price action. And I think Nvidia might cool off a little bit because of the whole market and also thanks to Tesla. So it is what it is. A little pop and drop is expected. Watch resistance at 616, followed by 620. Watch support at 612. If you lose that, there's 610, followed by 607 and 605. I think a pop and drop is very probable. Finally, for Aapl might pop as well, retest 194.4 to 195 possibly, but I think 195 is a bit of a stretch. Might pop first into the 194s, then reject, and start coming back down to 193.5 and eventually 192.5. What do I think this is going to do? Pop, then drop back down is the most likely possibility. That's what I find to be very probable for Aapl. We'll be watching this very carefully just to be safe. But I think that Aapl has more downside coming, might pop first to grab liquidity before it starts sinking, so watch your levels very carefully. If anything, that's pretty much it for now. I'm going to end the video from here because I'm uploading this very late. Unfortunately for Tesla, it's looking very weak. There's going to be a risk of more downside now since Tesla missed earnings. And even if the whole market starts sinking, it's going to drag Tesla lower. So be careful, guys. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and do what you have to do. The short term is looking more bearish for Tesla. The long term is still very bright, even after what Tesla announced. I also wanted to note that in my videos, I'm using a different computer because my PC basically broke. I won't be able to repair it until like Friday, give or take around that period. So if you feel like the overall quality is not the best, or if you feel like the sound quality is not as great or anything like that, just know it'll only last a few more days until I get everything fixed up. I'm also still feeling kind of ill, so I apologize if I cough every now and then. I'm still doing the best I can to keep this going and not let that get in the way. So please have a great day, guys. I'm doing the best I can to improve. I want everyone else to improve out there as well. Never give up, and just do what you have to do and do what's best for your own portfolios and your own lives. As far as Tesla goes, looking kind of bearish, so just be very careful. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you and peace out.